right. Here we go. What's going on, guys? Welcome to Midday Due Diligence with Pick Six Sports. I'm Stevie J. Camber. Nick's in the house with us as well. Be sure that you like and subscribe. Catch every show that we have. We have midday shows throughout the week. We also have, of course, Friday Night Freestyle. Nick's and crew, they handle that. So like and subscribe and get on board with this. We're going to talk about this Bengals game. The Cowboys picked up a W at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. We're also going to talk a little bit about this Giants game that we've got coming up on Monday night. Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Who would have ever imagined that they'd get one of those in with a division game sometime early in the season? Cowboys 3 weeks into the season, 2 games on prime time because it's the Dallas Cowboys. That's how
we sell ratings.
Give me a little bit of thought. Give me a little bit of your idea of what you thought of the Bengals game.
So I was there in person. The offense did exactly what it needed to in that first half. Our defense, chef's kiss to Dan Quinn and that crew. I was really worried about Jaron Kearse being out, and one Mr. Donovan Wilson. Look, whoa. I mean, absolutely amazing. Stellar performance out of him. Got a shout out to Armstrong and Fowler out there. You know, I'm sorry. Are we missing Randy? Because I'm not missing him at all. But, you know, and then the cardiac Cowboys did exactly what they want to do to my heart and had me freaking out there till the last 3 seconds. I do have to question the Bengals. 2 timeouts on the board and they don't ice our kicker.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anybody even bring that up, to be honest.
No, there was 2 timeouts still on the board and they did not. I mean, he kicked it and I'm like, damn it, it's going to be good and it's not going to count. And Maher's going to have to kick 3 of these probably. And then all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, we won. So, you know, thank you. It was an early birthday gift and I appreciate it.
Well, I think one thing for sure here, what we've learned from Cam and Cooper Rush history, if Cooper Rush plays and Cam's in the building, the Cowboys are 2-0 now. So not only is Cooper Rush 2-0, but Cam's 2-0 as well in that front. But, you know, as we were watching the game, I ran a halftime space and going into that third quarter, I was pretty much like, I think the Cowboys have to get at least 3. This is kind of what I felt like. Obviously, I said at least 3. That's exactly what it took. It took them all the way to the very end, as Cam said. But we ended up with the 3. Man, I think the biggest takeaway, obviously, Donovan Wilson, the great game that he played, and, you know, he showed that before that he could do that. What a great job by him. LVE, once again, I talked about him after last week. People kind of say, Nix, I don't know, and I talked about it leading up this week. I think he was going to be the green dot guy. I think LVE is having a very strong campaign here for him at the first 2 games in this season. And just in general, we heard about all the fuss and muss about the Pollard action and the play calling and early on, right, it wasn't just the idea of, okay, well, Zeke's had 2 drives, we'll give Pollard a drive. They actively, with intent, got Pollard the ball, and it paid dividends early for sure. So it was exciting to see that. Now, after the first couple of drives, it was a little, you know, ebbs and flows here and there somewhat, but enough to get the job done. And, man, once again, shout out to Money Maher. I mean, a 50 and a 54-yarder, the game winner, of course, and, of course, week 1. My man is currently 100%. Made the extra points as well. Something we didn't see yet, but he made those as well. So, game ball to Money Maher.
Yeah, and not only that, but you got to remember that first field goal came with under 10 seconds to go in the second quarter. So they were going into the half. So that's 2 clutch field goals that he gets to end the half, both from wild distance away. You know, I mean, somewhere that you don't feel good about it. And especially that second one, the way he struck it, the way it was sailing. I mean, midway through, when it was at its apex, I said out loud, he missed it. Like, just put it out there into the world like a big idiot, like a big dummy. You know, pushing that ball even further to the side.
Right.
And luckily, you know, it found its way through. And this kind of goes back to something we mentioned last week after the Bucs game. You're kind of looking for silver linings. You're looking for positives. And, man, not just Maher, you were concerned about the kicker. We had our concerns about O-line, wide receiver, replacing Randy Gregory, Coop. Kicker, we were dead set that this was just going to be an issue. I think we had accepted it at this point. It was going to be a problem. And for the second week in a row, Brett Maher comes up huge and knocks one down. So I'm really thrilled about that, man. And Nick's special teams matter, baby. Special teams matter.
And, even on top of that, and kind of alluding to what you were talking about there at the second quarter at the end there, well, what sets it up? You get a great punt. Shout out to Anger. What do you have, 4 or 5 punts inside the 20, pinning them back. Hidden yardage here matters, helps your defense. And then you get the nice, decent return there for Turpin to set up them to have the opportunity to get that field goal. So, great game in general from the special teams, from everywhere from the punting game to obviously the place kickers we're talking about, and Turpin with a timely return there to get them set up for that 3 there at the end of the first half.
Yeah, and going back to the offense, when we talk about this offensive line, we talk about we were concerned about the kicker, but there's still some worries along the offensive line, in my opinion. Farniok, I'm not sure really exactly the level that he's playing to. I don't know if it's up to par, up to snuff, but I also think that I'm getting a little bit worried about this gradual. I mean, it's very gradual at this point of bringing Jason Peters along. But I did think that Farniok had good moments. Pretty much when you saw Tony Pollard break for a big run, it's because Farniok did his job. He completed his assignment. You go back to the 47-yard run, you go back to the 17-yard run, and Matt Farniok is completing the assignment. He's getting to where he needs to go, and he's even on the move. It's not just man in front. He's pulling, and I was really happy with that, but the body of work for Matt Farniok has not been good enough. You go back and you find other plays, and the Bengals really took advantage of him there. Now, he had a tough assignment, but all of them are going to be tough. It's the NFL, Now, fortunately, you got the Giants coming up, and it seems like Leonard Williams is not going to be in the lineup, and that's going to be a boost for a guy like Farniok. But at the end of the day, this is still kind of a situation where maybe we're further along than we thought we would be with the offensive line, but we can still see that, okay, this could be an issue.
Well, and also, I heard Brian Broaddus and Bobby Belt mention this. There were 4 calls on Tyler Smith that weren't holding calls that weren't called that probably could have equated to about 70 yards in penalties, and they weren't called. So there's a little concern. I mean, that would have really done some damage if he had gotten called on those.
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing thus far for me, Todd Biotis stacking back-to-back good games, another good game for him. And, tip the cap here to Terrence Steele from week 1 and some of the suspect things that happened with him. Solid game from Terrence Steele here. Week 2, eliminated the penalty issues, was going up against Trey Hendrickson, did a great job against him as well. And I'm going to kind of lean here towards, I'm going to go to someone with a little bit more credibility, pelts on the wall here with Duke Mayweather. And something that he said today earlier about Tyler Smith is the sooner they can get him back to left guard, the better. And, he was kind of going back and forth with the guy with some questions. He's like, he believes after working with him that Tyler Smith can be an elite left guard, and happened to mention like the left guard position hasn't really been solidified with the Cowboys since Ronald Leary. And back to your point there, Stevie, of, James kind of hold him once again here with Peters out here at left tackle. But I do think you're going to feel a lot better about this line when and if they enact Peters at left tackle and get Tyler Smith back into the left guard.
Yeah, for the time being, it's holding up by all means. I mean, you hold these teams like Cincinnati, and they'll get it together. I understand that they're off to a really, really rough start, especially how that Pittsburgh game went. But at the end of the day, they've got Joe Burrow. They've got wild playmakers on the outside, and they've got a quality defense. I mean, they're going to end up, doing similarly to how they did in the regular season last year. I think they were 10-7. So I think that that's going to be ultimately who they are. this season. So it's a good win for the Dallas Cowboys, especially with a backup quarterback. That offensive line, I'm just kind of sitting here waiting. We had a good game out of Terrence Steele, and then suddenly, when you look at these departed players, we talked about replacing Randy Gregory. That hasn't been felt at all, and we felt the missing Leo Collins in week 1, I think. But when you watch them play, you get to see one of them in every possession. I hate this in my core, but at the end of the day, it's better for the Dallas Cowboys. The Joneses get to walk away from that game saying, "We told you so."
We'll take a couple of those, but not many.
I mean, for sure. Yeah, I mean, for sure. Of course, now Leo Collins had to go against Micah Parsons, and we know what that means for anybody in this league in general.
And if it wasn't Micah, it was Tank. So that's not a good day for anybody.
And, watching the tape and kind of going through, the biggest thing that we talked about before, when you have a guy like a Parsons, and I kind of equated this to when we were talking about week 1 and Von Miller and how he's kind of changed that front for the Bills, even with the kind of pressure that other guys are able to get. We're seeing that now looking at the film against the Bengals. Obviously, Parsons was getting home, but you were seeing certain things that he was doing that ends up getting LVE a sack. It ends up, we got to go double here. Now Dorrance Armstrong is able to go in here and get a sack. So it's not just about him being number 1 in the league in sacks, number 1 in the league in quarterback pressures, number 1 in the league in hits. The Cowboys ended up with 7 sacks this past Sunday afternoon, and him and what they have to do against him, that is Micah Parsons, is affecting getting these other guys home. So I'm excited. Look, seeing a little bit of the D-Law sliding inside with Fowler on the side of him too was a nice, interesting look. And going from week 1 to week 2 that I thought was very intriguing here from backwards hat Dan Quinn in the booth. Boy, they just gave a ton. They just gave a ton of different looks here to Joe Burrow. They were not going to be stagnant up front and just continuously let him, because of who Joe Burrow is, get comfortable with the kind of looks that they were getting. And Parsons was everywhere. D-Law was moving around. You saw Dorrance coming in and out, and they just really did a good job of disguising things up front. And kind of back to a lot of things we talked about in the spaces during the offseason and preseason, Stevie, this front seven had an opportunity to be really good, we thought, and especially with Dan Quinn talking about the in-game packages of what they're able to do. And shout out to Anthony Barr. A lot of criticism about Anthony Barr week 1.
I was too.
Yeah, Anthony Barr definitely showed up and showed out this week.
Yeah. Anthony Barr went from sluggish and not getting off and going after it in week 1 to a different player on Sunday. So, yeah, big shout out to him.
Yeah, and you mentioned the contribution from Donovan Wilson. And it can't be just one area. It can't just be dropping down into coverage and in the box. He's made plays in both areas. And when you think of Donovan Wilson and the breakout year that he had in 2020, he was more of a downhill, what's in front of me is what I can handle. And then week 1, I thought we saw some better coverage from him. I mean, he tracked Julio Jones deep across the field, and that's tough to do. And then this week we see once again the striker, Donovan Wilson. We see the guy who's more of a hitter. And so it's really interesting that the run and chase has been a little bit of an issue for Donovan Wilson in his career. And we saw it in week 1. And then this week we saw the kind of classic, the guy that we've come to know to make splash plays. And when he doesn't make splash plays, I mean, he makes game-changing, just completely new outlook of the game type of stuff. And so without him, you had Cincinnati gaining a little bit of momentum throughout that third and fourth quarter. In the second half, I thought Dallas throttled down way too early. And that's what it felt like going into the third quarter, is that Kellen Moore just shifted down in gear and thought, you know what, we can shorten the game and pack up and go home. And that put a lot on the defense. Now, they were up for the challenge with all except one drive that took just about a quarter out of the second half. But when it comes down to it, that defense really, really showed up. And there are guys like Donovan Wilson who made plays throughout the night and should get credit, while we sit here and marvel at Micah Parsons.
Well, and guys, we haven't even mentioned someone on the defense that had a video that was aimed at him. Trayvon Diggs tackling, wow, that phenomenal. Shut down Chase when he was on him. I mean, stellar performance out of him too.
Yeah, I mean the huge tackle there, right? Especially the last drive for Cincinnati, they get the completion out to the right side, and if Diggs doesn't make the tackle, they get the first, and the drive is on at that point. And a huge tackle there for Diggs, and just in general, I mean, like you said, that was 2 catches, 14 yards for Chase. Just a phenomenal game from him, and also amid the run defense. After week 1 and really getting abused there a little bit on the left side, we had a Sam Williams sighting this week 2 as well. Showing up and doing some things, but the way they were able to combine and hold down Joe Mixon and not let him, affect the game like Leonard Fournette did the week before is a great sign for this front seven as well.
And a shout out to Malik Hooker because they lost the mics in the helmets, and he took over. He took over right there on the field and started directing. So,
yeah, and that goes back to the safety depth. Now we're talking about 2 guys who you're really counting on, some low dollar, short contract type of dudes, and that's really who you've been counting on all this time. And especially without Jaron Kearse in the lineup, there was a moment where Joe Mixon kind of had a dodge on Donovan Wilson at first, and I think it's interesting because Jaron Kearse probably makes that tackle, but I think that it's something that we should expect out of Donovan Wilson. Like, rather than Jaron Kearse makes that tackle, I think that it's Donovan Wilson has to finish that play. He's physical enough. This is his brand of football. This is where he excels, is coming downhill, kind of that hybrid linebacker, just like we talk about with Jaron Kearse. And he's got to be able to finish that particular play. Outside of that, though, I mean, these safeties were outstanding. And Malik Hooker with the communication, that's massive at the end of that game. And then, look, Trayvon Diggs did not suddenly turn into some hit stick monster, okay?
No.
Next week against the Giants, Saquon Barkley comes to his edge. It's still going to be business decisions to be made. But in this particular case, your blood's flowing. You know what your team needs. You know what you've got to do for your team, and he did it. He whatever goes through Trayvon Diggs' mind whenever a running back comes to his side, whatever it is, we've seen his tackling form. It's not the best. I mean, he gutted up, and came downhill and closed on Tyler Boyd, I think it was. Tyler Boyd on the outside and made a huge play.
Yeah, and I mean, Tyler Boyd is a big-framed receiver. He's not a small guy. So,
no.
Once again, did what the, at the time it mattered, and he came through. That's what what you want to see. Yeah, we talked about it extensively, some of those runs to his side with Leonard Fournette week 1. Yeah, business decisions, as you said. Yeah, some of those. And leading into what you're talking about there with Saquon Barkley, who currently leads the league in rushing. So there's going to be some more plays to be had here. We'll see, the temperament and how that plays out when it comes to Diggs.
I just want to interrupt for a second. And we had something happen in fantasy football this week.
Uh-oh.
So Stevie J and I weren't matched up in one league. We were matched up in 2.
This is why I don't play.
Uh-oh.
And I told Camber before, I was like, look, I don't play fantasy football. I don't like the randomness of it. And Dak Prescott was my quarterback. That's gone.
Tough sledding.
Tough sledding. Jerry Jeudy was one of my top receivers. He's gone.
More tough sledding.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen was my wide receiver. He's gone. And so suddenly I'm out here just getting spanked in the street. Like I had Kirk Cousins versus Josh Allen.
Oh, yeah. That was an L. Yeah.
Yeah.
What can you do?
What can you do?
Yeah.
But
it was all in good fun.
Yeah, it is all in good fun, and
I beat George Teague last week, so
see that's where you toot your horn.
Yeah.
It's beating George Teague, not Stevie J, who doesn't care about fantasy football.
Right.
I haven't heard this yet. Gallup is going to be rated against the Giants, apparently. I don't know.
I haven't heard anything to confirm that.
Let's throw that back up there, though. What's that name?
Yeah, Jerry. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, let's just go with let's say he is going to go out there and play. It seems too early for me. I always thought game 4 or 5 is kind of where I was at. Obviously, things on the timeline and what's happened here, maybe puts a little bit extra pressure to get him onto the field. Obviously, we know he did practice in pads last week. It just realistically depends on how much does he believe in that knee, how comfortable is he with the knee from the psychological standpoint, and kind of moving forward in that realm. But yeah, for me, a little early in that case if it is happening. But they have the doctors and everything in house, so we'll kind of see from there. But for me, yeah, it seems a little early if he's the lineup against the Giants.
So No C, our friend Patrick No C, this was as of last night, said that they're ramping up for it. We could see them. I'm not seeing anything that says he's definitely coming back. As far as months go out from surgery, if he did play this week, we all know that his snap count's going to be limited. That's only 1 or 2 weeks early from surgery till now. So they said that he's been doing really well with his rehab, that they're doing a different form of rehab with him, and he's taken to it well. But like I really think that snap count will be limited if he is.
I will say there was someone who I believe we're all familiar with on Twitter, who said that they believe 1,000% that Michael Gallup is going to play, and probably, like you said, about 20% of a snap count, about 20% of the snaps, kind of get him acclimated. But this is someone, he said it publicly, so I guess it'd be okay not to be trite. He tweeted yesterday, like, it's happening, guys. Like, he's going to be out there. And so it's funny because sometimes it's like, dude on Twitter, but you learn who people are and kind of, who they are. And you're like, okay, this is a person we can listen to. So I think he's going to be out there. And if he can make a play, and remember, guys heal differently. Everyone heals uniquely. Was it Cam Akers who came back after, like, I don't know,
2 weeks? No.
Yeah. I mean, he went and
was like, what?
And, had a beer and came back onto the field. He was good, just rub some dirt on it type of thing. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe it's possible. Maybe he could be good to go, and we're just uneasy because of what we don't know.
Yeah, it's always the thought process of too soon a re-injury. And unfortunately, with the Cowboys, we kind of have a history of that with different receivers, whether it's been Dez Bryant, whether it's been Miles Austin. We've kind of seen these guys kind of get rushed back and then they go down again. So I think a lot of the angst with it being just 2 games, third game of the season, he's back, is where is he at? Now, depending on how they handle him, we start talking about 20% of the snaps and ramping him up. Sure. You feel pretty good about it in that standpoint. But I just think it's a lot of PTSD, if you will, from rushing wide receivers back from injury in Dallas, particularly here, and seeing some injuries come back.
And what's interesting about that is Mike McCarthy has done a good job of protecting players who are hurt.
Right.
Even more interesting, though, is they weren't willing to protect Dak and Zeke. A lot of people felt Dak should have missed more than just 1 game to get the calf injury healed. We know that Zeke should have sat. We know for a fact Zeke should have healed up. And so it's really interesting that Neville Gallimore, he's going to get all the time he needs. D-Law, he gets all the time he needs. But then, I mean, were there other players on the offensive side who were out for an extended period of time, maybe a week or 2 longer than perhaps what was necessary for their healing. Because on the defensive side, they were like, no, we are making sure this guy is absolutely 100%. And I don't know, it's just strange. And I just kind of bank on it going back to what we don't know. So maybe D-Law and Neville Gallimore were a little worse off than we thought. And maybe Michael Gallup is healing up a little bit quicker than we think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, and then that'll lead us into the Dak injury and what's happening there and how quickly he comes back. The only thing I think of, Schultz apparently has the same style of injury as Zeke.
On the PCL.
Right. And the word is, and our guy Mass just dropped in here a little bit earlier, that they're thinking he's going to miss a game. So interesting in that standpoint that he might be missing a game whenever Zeke, back to your point there, Stevie, last year didn't miss any time.
Yeah, and you're talking about two different positions. From a physicality standpoint, they're similar. I would say even more similar than running back or excuse me, tight end to wide receiver. You think both are pass catchers, but the truth of the matter is the reality of those positions is they're more colliders. There's going to be a whole lot more blocking from both of those positions. You're going to have to use those knees, you know what I'm saying, to get into your opponent. So that may have something to do with it, but at the same time, are you saying it's more severe than what Zeke was going through while Zeke was getting a heavy workload? I don't buy that. I think they mismanaged it last year, and perhaps right now we're taking a look at it and going, okay, well, we can't make that same mistake. I don't even know if they believe last year was a mistake with Zeke, but they can't make the same mistake here. And perhaps we'll get to see Jake Ferguson break out in the passing game because, in my opinion, he broke out in the blocking game last week against the Bengals, but now it's time to get him a couple of receptions.
Yeah, and also when we start talking and getting into some of that 12 personnel stuff, Hendershot season can begin. Hopefully I can coin season behind Hendershot and not get in trouble for that.
You said it, not me.
No, fair. But yeah, that'll be very intriguing because we know last year now, whenever it was Schultz and Jarwin, once Jarwin went down, they just completely kind of abandoned the 12 personnel. Now, granted, there were some things there with McKeon as well that was hurt and whatnot, but we do know that Ferguson and Hendershot are both healthy, ready to rock. So game plan wise, it'll be interesting enough to see how much of 12 personnel they're going to use with Hendershot coming in, or is it just going to be really the Jake Ferguson, or are they going to start with Michael Gallup coming back? Now all of a sudden you're going to start seeing some more 3/4 wide receiver sets. So something to pay attention to moving forward.
Mass loves him some Ferg.
I do too. And like I was saying with Farniok earlier on the big runs from Pollard, same exact thing with Jake Ferguson. All right. If you get to that 17-yard run in the fourth quarter, then you'll see Tyler Smith and Farniok pull to the right side, get down on their dudes, get the block, and that allows Tony Pollard to get through the initial front, the defensive line. But then you see Ferguson get a little chip in on a double team with, I think, Terrence Steele, and then turn around and seal off the lane from a Bengals linebacker. And it was just a beautiful sequence. I mean, just poetry in motion, the way that they were able to execute those blocks. And that's not really something I would expect from a day 3 tight end. You know what I'm right. saying? 4th round. So I'm really interested to see now if he can get going, maybe having a little bit of a rapport with Cooper Rush and helping out in the passing game a little bit more, because that's about as good as you're going to see. And so if he's up for the task blocking, that's going to do a lot for this team.
Right. And unfortunately with Schultz, obviously coming out of Stanford, considered a blocking tight end, it's just been a very mixed bag with him when it comes to the blocking. So when you dip into Ferguson and you look what they asked him to do at Wisconsin, he was kind of cut from that same mold of the blocking style. But so far early on in his career, it seems to be a little bit better return here from him in that blocking scheme, as you mentioned before. So, yeah, I mean, that's exciting on that front. And, of course, as I've always talked about, when you have a guy like that can block, you can just help your tackles out. And, especially when we talk about Tyler Smith and being thrown out there, any kind of little help with chips and whatnot, whether it's the running back or the tight end, just helps you tremendously. Or you're able to block down and let him maybe take out of the defense. So it just gives you some options in the blocking scheme whenever he's able to step up to the table and do the things he's been able to do thus far in the blocking game.
Yeah, and then you come up. I don't know how much of a threat the Giants tight ends are. You know, I mean,
Right.
I don't even know who their tight ends are.
It's Bellinger and Tanner Hudson.
Oh, Bellinger's a rookie out of San Diego.
Yeah.
Right.
He's a good player. I mean,
he's a good player,
again,
but
again, rookie. I'm always very skeptical of how much rookies can contribute. I mean, you look at our own 3rd round pick right now, can't even get on the game day roster. You know, so when that's their number one, I think he had a touchdown this past week. Bellinger,
right?
I don't know, but I mean, it seems like we're kind of even in that department. Just based off of we're both going out there with rookies. We're both trying to kind of get everything acclimated with the offensive line. And I think the Giants offensive line is a really interesting conversation to have, especially going up against Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence and company.
Yeah, I mean, they're giving up, through the first 2 weeks from a pressure standpoint. I think they're number 1 in the league, if I'm not mistaken, on the pressure front. I know I was looking at it a little bit before we came on today, but they're definitely high in that stat. So, and you look at the fronts that they played, whether we're talking about Carolina, right, last week, and then the week before that was, I forgot who they played the week before that now. Who did they play? Titans. There it is.
Titans,
That's
yeah.
right, Titans. Right. So, and giving up some pressure to them and knowing what the Cowboys bring to the table pressure-wise, coming off of a 7-sack game, and even, getting to Brady a couple times even and making him uncomfortable and understand what it is to try to be able to get to him. So, I think that's definitely a big check mark here going into this game against the Giants. I think offensively, offensive line-wise and defensive line-wise, especially with the guys that they're going to be missing on the defensive line for the Giants coming up with Leonard Williams. Looks like their prize rookie and Thibodeau's not going to be ready either. And just we have a clear advantage there on the offensive defensive line against the Giants.
And their edge, Ojulari is questionable too.
Yeah. Not sure if he's going to play yet or not.
And then Aaron Robinson, their corner, he's questionable too. So they're dealing with. They seem pretty solid as far as injuries and whatnot going on the offensive side, but the defensive side, they've got some issues.
Right, and of course they just re-signed Jalen Smith, who started a couple games for him last year. Doubt he'll be on the field this week. They got him to the practice squad. But, I mean, yeah, injury-wise and just depth-wise, they got to kind of cobble some things together on that side. Offensive line-wise, the one thing I will say is obviously they have the leading rusher in the league in Saquon Barkley. So that's kind of where they want to hang their hat somewhat in their offensive line. And we talked about this before even with our line. Prototypically, we have a young line. You're trying to get things together. The run blocking is going to come a little bit more naturally than the pass blocking. And we're definitely seeing that with them where the pressure they're giving up on Daniel Dimes versus Saquon and what he's able to do in the run game. So that's going to probably be somewhat of the tipping point here, how the Cowboys are able to lock down the run game once again here against Saquon, because I think they're going to be able to get to Daniel Jones. For what I've seen the first 2 weeks and what the Cowboys are bringing to the table, I think they're going to be able to get there to him. So what is it going to mean for them to be able to stop the leading rusher in the league?
Yeah, and Andrew Thomas is a lonely man out there in New York City. Because you were talking about how they're giving up the highest pass rush rate in the league right now, and Andrew Thomas is actually one of the highest graded players in the NFL, one of the highest graded offensive linemen in the NFL, and then across the board after that are grades like in the 40s and 50s. And it's just like, man, we kind of thought that this is the life that Zach Martin was going to be living. And then Terrence Steele had a better week too. Tyler Biadasz has not been bad.
No.
Tyler Biadasz has been starter worthy. I mean, you can't, I don't think that you can, toot his horn too much. I don't think that you can say he's playing at this great level, but I think you can go, okay, that's starting caliber performance in weeks 1 and 2 from Tyler Biadasz. And then, hopefully we get left guard patched up with our first round pick whenever Jason Peters moves in there. But I really thought that we were going to be in a similar situation as the Giants, but man, turns out they've got a stud at tackle, and then Evan Neal is not doing a whole lot out there. They've always had trouble with the interior line ever since their Super Bowl days. After the Super Bowl in 2011, it just seems like that interior offensive line kind of started to dwindle little by little, and they've never fixed it. They've never been able to get it reacclimated.
Yeah, I mean, they've thrown picks at it, right? I mean, Hernandez most recently they drafted, who was kind of one of the guys who was kind of high on our board. They picked him up in the second round, just didn't have it to pan out for him at guard. They had the Flowers experiment there, sometimes a tackle, sometimes a guard as well, just before Hernandez had never panned out for him. So definitely some struggles in there from the pass blocking standpoint. But so far they're getting it done in the run game. The one thing I will say, though, about Saquon, and I do feel like this is very true of him, he's very much of it's going to be about 7 or 8 carries of 1 to 2 yards, but then all of a sudden he'll bust you one up for like 67.
We're hitting a remix.
Right.
All right. So, well, and I agree. I mean, that's kind of Saquon's game, and there's others. Look, Derrick Henry has kind of lived in that world a little bit as well. I think that he's been more consistent, of course, but whenever it comes to a guy like Saquon Barkley, if you can prevent the big play, if you can stop the one big hitter that is coming your way at some point or another, all right, if you can just suppress that one play, then you're going to have a lot of success against the New York Giants. And then the other thing, Camber, that we're going to have to talk about is kind of how the receivers match up with the corners, because even though as Nick's pops back in here, you good?
Got a phone call. Sorry. Yeah, somebody called my phone. Sorry.
Oh, gotcha. Well, I was just saying that it's interesting because the Giants have a few more small, shifty receivers, and the Cowboys tend to struggle a little bit more covering the smaller, shiftier guys over those big bodies. I mean, you look at Jamar Chase is kind of a unique hybrid type of dude, but he plays downfield and tries to play big downfield. And so I think the Cowboys did a good job of handling that type of guy. Obviously, Mike Evans, he had the one spectacular play in the end zone on a 5-yard, just throw it up, jump ball. But outside of that, big wide receivers don't do much against the Dallas Cowboys. And that's what concerns me a little bit. We saw what Tony did last year, like his one appearance in the season.
Right.
Like outside of that, I really don't think that he did much of anything. But those are the type of guys that kind of make me look sideways. I think they're a bad 2-0 team, the Giants, but that's probably the one thing, the one big hitter from Saquon Barkley, and then the small shifty receivers. That's pretty much all that concerns me with the Giants.
Yeah, Galladay's been non-existent so far this season. So.
I don't even know who that is anymore.
Right. He's gone away. Not Galladay. He's gone away. Sterling Shepard can be a little interesting for them to cover, like you're talking, shiftier in that way. And Tony. David Sills, he's a guy. He's a guy. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of their wide receivers, I mean, Slayton at times has done some things against us over the last couple of years. Right, Sterling Shepard's back into the fold as well. Again, but will Daniel Jones have the time? I think that's the biggest neutralizer. Back to what you were talking about, especially with Tony and the game that he had against us last year, is if we're able to get to him, we can kind of limit those things. But yeah, for sure, the big thing for me is Saquon Barkley popping off a couple of big runs is definitely a huge concern on the standpoint of this game for us.
And have we heard any kind of timeline on Curse? I haven't.
The original statement was 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
That's what they said originally. But I haven't heard anything this week so far about him.
Is it possible that they feel they're so deep with their roster on defense that perhaps that's the reason why they're not putting guys on IR and living the way that they are with we got inactives that can come up and play a role for us and us not miss a beat. You look at Basham, you look at Curse, and neither of those guys went on IR, even though they could potentially miss the allotted amount of time that would, put.
And we lost Ridgeway
wait,
because of it. No,
yeah,
we lost Ridgeway yesterday because of it.
Real quick, I thought they did put Basham on IR. Am I tripping?
Did they?
I thought they put Basham, which I thought was interesting because he was of a 1-2 week kind of miss guy with the thigh bruise. Yeah, Basham went to the IR. But it was an interesting call just for the simple fact of out of the gate it was that Curse was going to miss more than Basham, but I guess they felt better about the depth on the D line. But again, instead of doing both of them, back to your point, Cam, you took a chance with Ridgeway, cut him, and now Washington scooped him up. So I think for me, in that standpoint, and it's really odd how the Cowboys operate because of how much they do love their draft picks. You would think that maybe they would have went with like a vet here, say, hey, we're going to cut you, and a little wink, handshake. They want to cut you, bring you right back. And instead, they took the chance for Ridgeway, and they lost out on him. But some of that, too, I guess, is for Quentin Bohanna walking through the door, and they feel better about it, so they felt like they could gamble with Ridgeway. But, yeah, just interesting from Stephen Jones and company because of how much they do embody their draft picks and what they like about their draft picks to expose him to that realm and ended up losing him.
He didn't have a very strong camp either, though. I mean, in preseason, Ridgeway didn't – and that's why – going back and a little bit off topic here, but I wanted the run stuffer all off season, and turns out Bohanna's, stepping up and playing that role, and he's doing a pretty good job. But
got that pad level down.
Yeah, and that was always his thing was, the weight, your size is pointless if you're standing straight up, So I think that when it comes to finding a run stuffer, you get hopeful about your draft picks. You see a lot of defensive tackles who were day 3 picks who end up being extremely good players with long careers in the NFL at that spot at defensive tackle. And so I can understand, being hopeful that a guy like that could turn out. But more often than not, a 5th round pick, it's not going to be a hit. I mean, that's just the way it is. It's going to be a guy who you can let go of and not really get hurt if he ends up somewhere else. And I think that's where we're at with Ridgeway.
But, it wasn't just Washington that went after him. It was multiple teams. I mean, people were seeing something in him. And so I don't know. I think that one bugged me a little bit more that they just kind of were able to toss him out in that way.
Yeah, they just misread the room, I think is what happened with him. I just think they thought especially looking when they released him, thought they could slide it right by and get there, but it just didn't happen.
And when's the last time we did put somebody down on practice squad and kind of gambled and we lost them? I mean, it's been a while. I mean, I don't know.
Rondell Carter, maybe?
Maybe
like a Justin Hamilton.
Yeah.
But,
it's been a while.
But prototypically, it's not draft picks though that they gamble with, and that's for me. That's why the fact that he's going to other people got him or whatever, just how the Cowboys in general feel about their draft picks and what they do. And you look at this team, right? What's Anthony Brown, a 6th round pick? Donovan Wilson, the game we were talking about, he had 6th round pick. Quentin Bohanna now in the fold here. What was he, a 5th or 6th? Like somewhere around in there. So they're definitely right. So I mean, there's guys that are contributing to this defense that they drafted, late that they like to develop. Obviously, Quentin Bohanna is one of those guys. He couldn't get it done last year, practice squad. Now this year, you're seeing the results. So just from the way that they operate, not from this being some big travesty of what happened here with the draft pick and whatnot for the Cowboys, just in the way that they like to operate and draft these guys late and develop them and do things with them, especially the defensive side of the ball, was just intriguing to me that they would expose him. That's all.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't think he was going to help against the Giants.
No.
I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's really going to help you much this year. Period.
Yeah,
it was just one of those
I don't think so.
Fresh redshirt years.
And that's kind of where I'm coming from. Is I think that you can find a guy if he wasn't going to help you out this year, you can find someone who can make up for what you're losing. I mean, not just anywhere, but it's not that hard to find a developmental one tech,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't, we've lacked in it because they don't try. It was a lack of just recognition in the position that kept Dallas from, and kind of still to a degree. We got a whole bunch of three techs, so many three techs to the point that they tried to put a little bit of weight on Neville Gallimore to make him a one tech. And then Gallimore got beat out by Bohanna, but it's a rotation and everything. And so it just doesn't bother me. I think he's just a guy. It would feel a lot like, to me, if you let go of, if Michael Gallup comes back and they let go of Dennis Houston, I'm going to be like, sucks, but all right, see you later.
It is.
Like, doesn't move me.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't move the needle. It wasn't, and we knew, we talked about this along this trip against the 53-man roster and moving forward, that there were just going to be some of these guys in this front seven, particularly the defensive line, that you just were going to lose at certain points because of how stacked that it is there right now.
So with the defensive line as it is right now, going up against a team like the Giants who have one stud, but then kind of weak along the rest of the way, what do you think is the best approach to attack that? I mean, obviously you have options, but do you try to overwhelm Thomas and then let other guys just go pick on the rest of the offensive line? Or do you say, all right, we're going to try to occupy Thomas with one-on-ones over here, and then we're just going to overwhelm the rest of the guys? Which way do you go?
For me, I think you run a lot of stunts, specifically on passing downs in cause confusion. I think is where it's at. They've kind of showed some problems passing guys off and doing certain things. So I think for me, I think it's a lot of multiple fronts, and I think it's a lot of movement after the snap to get guys home. And look, and of course, the ace in the bag of all this is, okay, Thomas, you're really good. Now do something with Micah Parsons, and we'll let everybody else eat.
I'm with you. I mean, Micah Parsons, I've said it pretty much all throughout the preseason games, because everybody talks about the lack of movement from the Dallas Cowboys in the offseason. But Micah Parsons going from year one to year two is better than anything anyone else did in the offseason. And you look at the Giants, and you might think to yourself, like, oh, they had a really good, they had a great draft. Thibodeau, Neal, they brought in some guys who can play. They had a better offseason than the Dallas Cowboys. Well, you kind of look at how Neal is playing. You look at no Thibodeau. I don't know exactly what else they added that would constitute that the Giants had a better offseason than the Dallas Cowboys, but let's think about this now on the other side. Micah Parsons, year two. That's pretty good. You also added Dante Fowler, who we all kind of were like, all right, this dude, either he's going to be a cut or he's going to be the one who blossoms and stands out among the rest. And he's kind of doing the latter. And, I mean, he is playing some outstanding football. And that, I think, is where teams are going to have a real issue is – mentally, they're always going to be Micah Parsons. He has that presence about him, kind of like when you're standing on the green with Tiger Woods and you got to putt. I mean, that's not fun. When that dude in that red shirt is standing right over there, you're lining up and you're about to drop back 5 steps to throw a pass, and 11 is standing on that edge. It's going to feel a lot the same. And so you can talk about, well, we didn't feel this. We didn't, make up for this guy leaving. But so far, Micah Parsons has shown that it really doesn't matter. Losing Randy Gregory at this point in time did not matter, as it turns out. And I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to that, I think you occupy Thomas. They just need to pick on Bredesen. I mean, that poor guy, he's going to be the gateway to make Danny see ghosts again. That interior, the whole entire interior line of them is just, I think they're going to have a day. And I would, and the way that Barr's playing and LVE. Shout out to my football husband last week.
Yeah.
That they're going to be instrumental in stopping that run game and that kind of pressure all day long.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing when it comes to LV, and again, some pushback after I talked about how well he played week one, and again, he played well again here in week two, is sometimes you have a player, and I thought about this over the past couple of days, like, what's some of the things there that are really benefiting him currently? And it's not even so much about just a health standpoint. If you go back to whenever he was good before the injuries and stuff started happening, you just had better depth on defense, which allowed him to be able to go do what he does. And I think you're just seeing some of that now when you're adding in. We talked about this defensive line where Parsons is in year two, and I'm right there with you. See, I was like, the crazy part this entire offseason I talked about was like, you saw what Parsons did last year. Theoretically, he should be better year two than year one when he didn't even play football his final season in college. And we're seeing that early on. And then you add Anthony Barr into the mix, and you're seeing where he's bringing along. But again, it takes some of the stuff off of LVE's plate where he can go and play. And it just matters. And you just have different players. We always talk about, no, you're not going to have all pros at every single position, but if you put the right kind of mixture together, guys that are decent enough and are good enough, and you take things off their plate, it excels their plate. I just think we're seeing that very early on with LVE. I think Dan Quinn understands who LVE is, and I think the way that they are lining things up and doing things that we ask about Kellen Moore at times with certain players, and hey, let's get them involved, especially how he did with Pollard. I think he's able to do that with LVE with what's around him now, and you're seeing the best from LVE so far here the first two games of the year.
Yeah, and something that LVE is also doing an outstanding job of is helping clean up the play, helping finish the play. I mean, you go back to the sack that he had, and everybody looks at that play, and we almost, not that we take away credit from LVE on it, but we recognize why the play took place. But LVE has been incredibly consistent in finishing those types of plays. You see a guy get hit in the backfield or hit at the line of scrimmage and he slows down. LVE is the guy coming in and cleaning it up. So he's playing great complementary football to his teammates. I mean, doing a great job even in coverage.
I was about to say he's better in coverage.
Exactly. So. Absolutely. And he has just been, from last year to this year, he went from his rookie contract to a 1 year, $3 million deal. And I wonder how much of a wake-up call that was to him. Obviously, he depends a lot on the health aspect, as you alluded to. But the simple fact of the matter is he looks more prepared. He's playing with a lot more speed. I mean, and not that LVE is a fast player. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like game speed, knowing and recognizing and getting to that spot is something he's doing a good job of right now. And, when that's I would say he's still your second best linebacker at this point in time, but Anthony Barr's right there. And then the way that Donovan Wilson is playing, Jaron Kearse coming back here in a week or two. Man, you've got such a great unit that is diverse. We kind of don't talk great about linebackers and their value to the team.
Okay, but, Dan.
I know.
Stop it, Mr. Rupert.
when you can do this many things with this unit, including rush the passer. We saw Anthony Barr line up on the edge a couple of times against Cincinnati. So I think that this is not just a good linebacker room, but it's one whose versatility brings more value than your typical linebacker room.
It's deep enough that we're not even seeing Jabril Cox on the field.
And not even active, right? Yeah, he hasn't even been active yet.
Well, you got to have your fullback Gifford in there.
That's right. You already know.
Right.
But it goes back to the same thing whenever LV was coming into the league, and and I was building the board and talking about him through the draft process. If LV is clean, he's an adequate linebacker. But if you can't keep him clean, the one thing about him is he can't get off blocks. He has a problem with that at times. And, right now they're keeping him clean, and you're seeing it. And it's a great point. I mean, so much to the point, he's feeling good. He finally broke out the wolf call. It's the first time in a long time.
Yeah, he did.
And he broke out the old wolf call. But you made a great point there, Steven's calling him. He cleans it up. What we should be calling him is, forget the wolf hunter. We should be calling him the cleaner, because he'll definitely clean things up in front of him whenever you keep him protected. And look, and that's no slight to LV and what he does, because I can take you back, not calling him Ray Lewis by any chance. There was a point in time in Ray Lewis's career, people were like, I think Ray Lewis is kind of washed. And then all of a sudden, here come Ngoli Nata in front of him and kept him clean. And all of a sudden, Ray Lewis was Ray Lewis again and great. So a lot of times these middle linebackers, you have to protect them. You know, you got to have big bodies. Shouts to Quentin Bohanna. This is kind of the effect here of eating up that space in those bodies in front, allowing him to make those moves and clean up the plays that are in front of him.
Yeah, and you mentioned Quentin Bohanna, and that's the guy to talk about. Osa has been playing well. I don't want to give just too much credit until we face a team again that is dedicated to. I was just thinking that too. The janitor. Remember the championship Mavs, 2011 Mavs, Brian Cardinal.
Yeah.
They had the custodian, Brian Cardinal. So
there
maybe LVE in a significantly larger role than what Brian Cardinal had, but he could be the janitor. That's a good one.
Thanks.
But man, what are we looking at as far as defensive line production against the Giants? And we mentioned how often, you look at LVE and Dorrance and them getting kind of these assists from Micah Parsons. Do you think that's going to become more of a thing with just, again, his presence, knowing where he's lining up, even though he moves all over the place, they're going to identify him pre-snap? Is this going to result in more instances like that where a guy like LVE or a Dorrance or a Dante Fowler, maybe some of those interior guys, kind of just like, oh, hey, look what fell in my lap. Thanks, Micah. Appreciate it. Is he going to be getting basketball assists on sacks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean he's creating opportunities, and we've got the personnel to step in and take advantage of them. Yeah, it's, there was that one video that came out and of a play where I want to say Armstrong might have been on his sack, but they look like a beehive had just swarmed in, and there were guys coming from every single direction. And I mean, Dan Quinn is a genius, and he's scheming these guys just right, and we're seeing him change it up. And yeah, I think they're going to take advantage every opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think just this past week, you can say he got 2 assists, the LVE sack and one of the Dorrance Armstrong sacks. So it's happening. Now, I don't know how many times we're going to see him just go unblocked. Like, obviously, the Bengals made a mistake there, just letting Micah Parsons get a free release. But that goes back to the credit of Dan Quinn and this coaching staff of showing something up front, scheming it a certain way, and it just allowed Parsons to get open. Yes, I do think eventually, no matter where he's lined up, they're going to come out. We see a lot of times the quarterback's like, here's the Mike, whatever. Well, it's going to turn out, here's the Micah. It's not going to be the Mike, but where's Micah, where he's on the left, the back, the slot, wherever it is. But when you do those things, now you're dictating what this offense is doing now. And now the other guys have the opportunity to step up. So, yeah, I think this is a moving forward kind of aspect from Micah. We already saw it this week against the Bengals, this prior week against the Bengals. I think you will see it moving forward. And, we talked about Dorrance Armstrong in last year. I mean, he had just as many sacks as Randy Gregory with 6. And now here he is with 2. So, yeah, I think that guy definitely benefits from it, along with other guys. And then just some of the scheme stuff, right? When you're kicking Parsons inside and you're putting Fowler over there. Parsons over here at a 5-tech, or even at time, or not Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence at the 5-tech, or even sometimes if you want to do the end game, you have him at 3-tech. He's just still a handful and a problem for teams. And that benefits, those other guys that got there well. So, right. I mean, early on, the biggest thing we could hang our cap on here in Cowboys Nation and kind of what we thought was Dan Quinn and where they're at with this front and what they're getting to and understanding it. And it kind of goes back to last year. Like a lot of these guys they brought in, whether it's the Carlos Watkins of the world and whatnot, and they brought in the curses, and we're kind of like, okay, they're bringing in these guys, and they drafted some guys, especially in the 3rd round, with like the Odighizuwas and the Chauncey Golstons, and we're kind of like, okay, but Dan Quinn has definitely shown he has a plan for these guys when he gets them in here, and early on, once again, we're seeing that this year. So from that standpoint, it's very exciting, and that's just what this team is going to lean on. We talked about it a lot leading up to the season. that we would have to lean much more on this defense we have to lean on this defense a lot more, especially early while we're waiting for some of these guys to get back with the James Washingtons, the Michael Gallis, but even more so now here with Cooper Rush with the Dak injury. But boy, the defense has been up to the task, and as much as I anticipated that, I think they've done even a better job than I could have imagined here over the first 2 weeks and what they've done and who they faced.
So this seems like a good week to me for Trayvon Diggs to get his first interception.
I'm good with that. Yeah.
What do you think, Nix? He's got himself muted right now. He's got a custom.
No, definitely. And here's the thing. Diggs does better on the big-bodied guys, like you talked about. I think he covers them better.
Hey, yo, I got to run. Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Can't let you go. Happy birthday, Cam, of course,
Thanks,
first and
guys.
foremost. Steve, everybody came and walked over the due diligence. I got to run. I got to get back to the job over here. It's calling me, so I'll let y'all later. Peace.
All right, peace.
Yeah, no, I think it's the perfect opportunity because Daniel Jones holds onto the ball too long. He's going to make that mistake when the pressure's on him, and that opportunity is going to be there for it.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Diggs' game needed to work on, and we've seen it is against some smaller wide receivers, and that's why I thought that Jamar Chase, not that he's a smaller wide receiver, but he can play like one. You know,
Right.
He can play a very shifty type of role, and he did a fantastic job. You know, we actually saw Alabama LSU Diggs versus Chase,
Right.
and it did not go well for Trayvon Diggs. It was ugly. This was a much, much better other opportunity to guard Jamar Chase for Trayvon Diggs than it was in college. Now, of course, a lot of that comes from Trayvon Diggs had no idea how to play corner in college. He was brand new to the position.
Yeah, he was a wide receiver.
He was a wide receiver, and they just converted him. And so that is instrumental in volume, how it speaks to his growth at the position and how far he's come from that spot. And everybody saw it. I mean, the Cowboys saw it. They drafted him in the second round, so they knew what kind of a player he was. But whenever it comes to these smaller wide receivers, I think Diggs is kind of getting the hang of it. I think that it's starting to come around, and that's why I kind of wonder if maybe perhaps a team that has a few of these smaller, shiftier wide receivers, if they will kind of think that they can take advantage of that. If they think that, okay, we can actually pick on Diggs here, and then next thing you know, he's going the other way with it. So that's something that's kind of something that I thought about in this matchup with the Giants. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, and then we'll wrap this up, Camber. I know you got big birthday plans today, but on the offensive side of the ball, you got Cooper Rush again. It doesn't seem like you're going to see Jason Peters this week. I don't know for certain, but that's how it seems right now. But if you don't, obviously you have Smith, Farniok, Biadasz, you have Martin and Steele. Perhaps not Dalton Schultz. We're getting some preliminary stuff saying that he's not going to be out there this week. I think that this is still a great opportunity to just run over the New York Giants. I think that even though two of their better pass rushers with Thibodeau and Ojulari are out, as Professor O is pointing out to us, Leonard Williams is out this week too. And I think that he is still their best defensive lineman at this point in time. So I still say that you run the football this week. And you can't.
Do you? I mean, look at their secondary on CD.
I'm not. No. I'm not. I mean, no one's scared of the Giants.
No, Adoree Jackson and Robinson's hurt. I don't know. I'd like to see CD go off, but
I would too.
And Noah Brown. Shout out to Noah Brown.
Hey, Noah Brown has been an unsung hero. Not only did he have 5 catches, 91 yards, a touchdown, but every catch went for a first down.
Right.
Every catch was a drive extender. So, and of course you want those guys involved, but you are potentially down your second best pass catcher in theory with Dalton Schultz.
Right.
But you still have good blocking tight ends with Jake Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
I think that rather than going out and in-game searching for that third pass catching option, you have CD. Lamb has proven his chemistry with Cooper Rush. That's a good situation that they've got going on. I would rather lean more on the run game than I would go out and experiment and try to find that third guy who can, catch some balls out there. Because I understand, look, Ferguson and Hendershot, they showed out in the preseason. I'm glad that we saw some of Ferguson's blocking on display, but they're still rookies, and this is a division game, Monday Night Football. This is a big, big stage to be on, and I'm not really interested in – okay, well, what can we come out here and learn about these guys? No, I would rather stick to what we know and what we feel will be effective. I think that this Cowboys offensive line can mow over the New York Giants in the run game. And if you can do that, then control it and do that.
Totally agree. Yeah, I mean, like Mass just said, I'm not super afraid of this Giants team. Their 2-0 record is
very Carolina Panther-esque from last year.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it is what it is. Not afraid. I would like to be there in New York on Monday night, but
Cowboys win when Camber shows up.
I know, with Cooper Rush is starting and I am there, it happens. But yeah, that's to be determined. It is race weekend here at Texas Motor Speedway. So it would be a very, very tired Cam that would be hopping on a plane Monday morning. So to be determined at this point.
Hey, okay, so how about this? It was the Panthers last year and the Bears the year before.
Right.
In 2020, the Bears, I think, got off to a 3-0 start or something of the sort. Who's worse? The 2020 Bears, the 2021 Panthers, or the 2022 Giants?
I'm going to say the Panthers, because they went hard in free agency, especially when it's dealing with their secondary, that of what they brought in. That I'm going to say it was the Panthers.
I think I'm going to go with the Bears. Okay. They were just, they were sad. They had no weapons. No. And I don't know. I wouldn't even know who they won those initial first few games against. Yeah. But
I guess I picked Panthers just because they did go. They
tanked the rest of the season. They were awful.
Well, they tanked the rest of the season, but they made huge plays. In free agency.
Yeah.
Dragging guys in for that secondary, and then they all went down with injuries and everything. But no, as far as how bad the teams were, I think the Bears were horrid.
So we should have done this before Knicks bounced out, but give me a prediction for Monday night.
Oh, okay. Oh, God. We're going to go big. We're going 38-17. Cowboys.
38-17.
Yeah, we're going off.
Now, do we look at that as, well, we just beat up on little brother, or considering all of our woes, considering we don't have a deep wide receiving core, we're without J-Ron Curse, Jason Peters hasn't plugged in yet. Are we excited? Are we really, really excited about beating the Giants that bad? Or is it like, it's the Giants, we should beat them that bad?
We're going to celebrate the win.
I like it.
But we know who we are and what they are, and we're just going to go in and get the job done.
There you go. So my prediction, I'm still going a little bit lower in score. I'm going to say the Cowboys win 26-20.
Well, Okay.
26-20. And I think that the offense, I would even lean more towards certainty of Michael Gallup playing. If you're talking about percentage, I would put it 90%. Now, if you're talking about snaps, it's going to be around 20%.
Right.
So you're looking at maybe some we intend to take a shot here, so we want our best deep threat on the field, that type of thing, which would be easy to identify if you're a defense. But we are who we are. So I'm curious to see how that works. I get it. Look, here's where I'm coming from. Can they stop the big pop from Saquon Barkley? Because if so, I agree they don't get the 20. But that's the one I think that they might be able to score some BS. Our offense made a mistake and they got a short field type of something or another, and then add another touchdown and a couple of field goals. So that's kind of my thinking there. They're still going to struggle offensively. But, yeah, I don't know exactly how well the Dallas Cowboys offense is going to operate even still. I mean, Cooper Rush, we've seen him as a spot one game starter before. We've never seen him start 4 or 5 consecutive games, and it makes a difference whenever a team has the ability to go back and look at you and start to see your tendencies and start to kind of find out and learn a little bit more about you. So I'll be interested to see exactly how all this pans out. I think Saquon is more explosive and more of a home run hitter than Joe Mixon. I think Mixon is more of the consistent type of back who can hit you. And so on that front, I'm very, very glad with how they handled Joe Mixon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. As Massey points out, 3 yards per carry. That is huge. And I think that they'll do the same thing to Saquon. I think that they'll hold him down to a low yards per carry average, but it's going to look good if he gets that one play off. And that's where, Camber brought it up early in the broadcast. He just has this one, it can be anywhere at any time, but it's going to be that one play where he pops off. And, if you can prevent that one, it ends up being more Camber's prediction than mine. I just think that thank you. Yeah, this is exactly what Saquon Barkley, what a day in New York looks like for Saquon Barkley, pretty much. All right, so there we go. Camber, anything else on the slate?
I think we're good.
I think we're good. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe, Pick Six Sports. We do this show every week. Camber does another show. They got the Freestyle Friday happening every Friday evening.
Right. And Mass and I will be on Friday this week. Thursday, I'm chairman of the Clay Shoot, busy all day, but I will be hopping on Friday, midday with Mass. And we've got some fun things.
There you go. So you guys be sure to keep your tabs. We appreciate you jumping in with Midday Due Diligence.
And thank you all for the birthday love. Appreciate it.